Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. James Stone, President, Executive Director of NorCal Guides and Sportsmen's Association. Have some discussions about salmon and water today. So we've got a lot of water across the state of California right now, as well as across the entire system. We've got flooding in the upper sections of the Sacramento and Feather Rivers, as well as we've got a lot of water that is coming now down through all of our weirs, and it's busting through all of the Tisdale, Moulton, Colusa, Fremont weirs, and all of that water is now gushing down into the Delta and working its way towards either two options, which are the state federal pumps down in Tracy and Byron area, or out to the ocean. We're going to talk all about water today and try to put together a little bit of common sense and education on water as well, on how that works and kind of who operates what, because I'm seeing a lot of misinformation out there. We had a post that we put out on Monday just about the reservoir heights and everything and how much water is actually out there, and it's gone super viral. A lot of people out of state, Southern California, commenting on that, and it is gone to the point to where it's a little bit of a lot of misinformation out there. So let's talk about that really fast. In 2022, the State Water Control Board shut down and curtailed 1914 water rights, and even water rights before 1914 on all the senior water right holders, okay? So what they did was they shut down everything. Now, I want you to know something. A lot of people say, yeah, all that water coming down the river is so bad for salmon because it's being diverted. Actually, I disagree in a lot of times. Oh, yeah, Klamath Trinity, Alex, I will give you those numbers next. I'm sorry about that. There's good parts. When water gets shipped from Keswick and comes down the river, that provides a colder water of pool for our adults when they're coming home. So that is important, as well as they need to smell the water. They need to smell it out in the Golden Gate. So that water needs to come down when they're returning as adults in order to come back. So that does need to happen. So there is advantages of water coming down the river for our adults. And so we do need to send water down. But in 22, we didn't. In 22, we were seeing water temperatures higher than 72 degrees north of Red Bluff in the fall. In August, September, October, 72, 75 degree temperatures north of Red Bluff. Everything died that spawned in 22 in the river. Everything. Feather River, dead. Sac River, dead. American River, dead. Everything died. The State Water Control Board, by not releasing water, killed everything in the rivers in 22, in the fall of 22. That means all of the natural production, they're dead. They're gone. Like this year, I told you 55 million eggs went in the gravel and the feather. It's a good thing, yeah. Right? 6.5 million eggs went in the gravel and the sac and all the tributaries, roughly guess, right? That's good. That's not enough, but I mean, that's a good thing, right? You need eggs to go in the gravel. But then if there's no water, they're dead, okay? Now, the reason I didn't mention the American is because the fish that spawn in the American are almost dead every year because they do not release cold enough water in September and October, and they don't release cold water until November, and by then it's too late. A lot of times the fish get gill rot, parasites, pathogens. They have thiamine issues, sea shasta, a lot of different things that happen to our fish. But the American River, that watershed needs the most help with a cold water pool to support adult salmon fall run in the actual American River. But getting back to that, are we going to go fishing? I think there's a chance. And I just want it to be clear that if there is an opportunity, we have to be aware that we are going to be forced to get away from the winter run, which we always are. Winter run, go down south in Monterey and down all the way down to Santa Barbara, right? So we're going to be curtailing time down there because you're not going to be able to gain access on the ocean. You got to stay away from those winter runs, right? Then you have the San Francisco sector, which is where all the fish come in, right? So you're going to have the most impacts right in the middle of the summer when everyone wants to fish, June, July, and August, right there in the mouth, right outside the Golden Gate, right on Muir Beach, right at Duxbury Buoy, right, right there at the point, right there at Half Moon Bay. Everyone wants to go fishing right then, but that's when we have all of our impacts on those fish, right when we all want to go fishing. More so on that timeline of that July, August, September, more than that May and June-ish, for some of those species, on those impacts. And then you've got the Fort Bragg sector, which has more of those impacts, and the Klamath, sector, and those are having more impacts on those sackfish. And so therefore, if you are in the northern state, I would say that I see less opportunity in that northern state. This is what I see. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. You all can lobby your salmon advisory subpanel members, which I am not one anymore. So don't lobby me. It doesn't matter what you tell me. It matters what you tell your representatives to have that access. But I believe that the further north you go, you're going to have more problems. And now we'll get into the Klamath. The Klamath Trinity, and I'm going to do this brief. All the Klamath dams came out, the 4 dams. We saw a return up there. They do not count hatchery fish up there. So Iron Gate Hatchery below Iron Gate Dam was removed, and they opened the Fall Creek Hatchery up there on the Klamath Main Stem River. That hatchery is supposed to raise upwards of 4.5 million green eggs and raise around 4 million fish. And this year, they have less than 100,000 eggs. I'll stop there, and I'll say that again. Fall Creek Hatchery on the Klamath River was supposed to get upwards of 4 million to 4.5 million green eggs to raise Chinook salmon, and they only have 100,000. So now you can do your 3-year advance and go, okay, now we know what's going to come back in 3 years to the Fall Creek Hatchery. Not many fish, right? Now, 6,000 fish did go above the dam removals into the new habitat waters. Great stuff. All real positive things, right? But what we need to realize is that the future of the Klamath River is going to be natural spawn only. It is not going to be hatchery driven. Therefore, there will be no clipped fish. That's why a lot of people out there are saying, let's go mark selective fishery. Let's go mark selective fishery. Let's clip 100% of our hatchery fish, and that will get us back on the water faster. You're correct. It will. That's what Washington did. That's what Oregon did. But if you go talk to the fishermen, it was the worst decision they all made. They made the decision in order to get themselves back on the water quicker so that they could go fishing. However, they never are allowed to keep a Chinook or a coho in certain areas, depends on where you are, what state, all the rules. But coho and Chinook, they can't keep clipped, non-clipped fish anymore. Remember, the Klamath River could produce upwards in 10 years from now. We could be seeing 1 million fish come out of the Klamath. They'll all have fins on their backs. And if we choose a mark selective fishery, we're never going to be able to keep a Klamath fish again, ever again. So make sure you're educating yourself on that with mark selective fisheries. I want you to be aware of that. But the natural spawning number that came back was around 25,000 fish of natural spawning fish. So, yeah, and that's it, Steve. If it's a choice between mark select or no fishing, people will choose mark select. And then that will satisfy their palate for a couple of years, and then the big boom comes down. Because then when the environmentalists realize how many hatchery fish that they think are inferior come back to the spawning grounds, what do they do next? Cut hatchery production. Too many hatchery fish are on the spawning grounds. They're affecting the natural Klamath stocks. They're affecting the natural sac stocks. They're affecting the natural feather stocks. Even though in the valley, we all know there's only hatchery fish. There are no wild fish left. There haven't been wild fish in decades. Anyone that tells you that there's pure genetic wild stocks left in the Sacramento Valley doesn't know what they're talking about. There are none. The state even stopped using the word wild. They started saying natural spawning because it's a stray from a hatchery that decided to spawn in the river. Fishermen and women all over don't care. They don't care if it comes from a hatchery, if it was born in the river. They eat the same, they fight the same, they taste the same, they look the same. When you get from a scientific perspective, there's a difference in fitness and genetics, chromosome 28, like I talked about, as well as the fitness of the fish coming back, producing enough eggs. I don't want to get into all of that right now because I'll confuse too many of you. But if you go Mark Select and you take the cookie early, long term, it's over for our kids and grandkids. That's all I can tell you. And there are people that disagree with me on that, and that's fine. Disagree with me. It's fine. Disagree with me. But I'm telling you, from experience, from our brothers and sisters in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska, we know that that's going to be an issue. That's why our groups have all been fighting for parental-based tagging, which is genetic tagging, not code wire tags, not clipping fins. We genetically tag these fish from parentage. So there's no markers. Then you can release them in the hatchery in the water whenever you want. Release them in February, release them in March, release them in April. Doesn't matter because we know how to genetically mark them now and identify them through PBT or GSI out in the ocean and PBT, and we would end up protecting long-term sustainability stocks. I'll get into that. We'll do a whole Zoom privately just on Mark Selective Fisheries, and we'll bring in some scientists to argue against me too, so that you can hear someone argue against me and hear the pros of Mark Selective Fishery. The only pros of Mark Selective Fishery are that you get to identify the hatchery stock 100%. You can then harvest all of the hatchery stock 100% and take it out. And then you can go fishing. You can have your cookie quicker. So that's that. Now let's get into, we've covered 2024. We covered all of 2025. Now let's talk water. So here's where it's important. You have the Shasta Dam, okay? And Shasta Dam is operated by the federal government. It's a federal waterway. It's a federal facility. It's operated by the Department of Interior Bureau of Reclamation. The Bureau of Reclamation controls Shasta. Whatever president is there nominates a secretary of the Department of Interior, and then that secretary then can appoint the top brass of their Bureau of Reclamation, and then there's employees under all of them that work for the Bureau of Reclamation. Also under the Department of Interior is U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which runs the federal hatchery, Coleman and Livingston Stone, for the winter run up there. So all of those hatcheries are federal operations. That is a federal facility, and the Trump administration dictates when and how much water comes out of that facility. That is called the CVPIA, started in 1992, the Central Valley Project, and the IA was Improvement Act. So that's the federal facility. Then the other federal facility is Folsom Lake, and that sits at about 1 million acre feet. Sorry, Shasta was 4.5 million acre feet, 4.5. Fully full, about 489 shoreline miles. Then you go down to Folsom Lake, American River, okay? Bureau of Reclamation runs it, okay? Trump administration, okay? They are currently running the American River, the Nimbus Dam, and the operation of that water that comes out of the American River. That's still the Central Valley Project. So they send water from Shasta and from the American, and they come down, they collide in Sacramento, and then they come down to Walnut Grove. And when they hit Walnut Grove, then they, in May 15th, after the protections are gone for the ESA listed fish, they open the Delta Cross Channel, the DCC. And then the water comes from the Sacramento River. It cuts right through the Delta Cross Channel, and it goes down the east side of the Delta, and then it drops down through past the San Joaquin system, and it drops down into Clifton, Court, Forbay, Tracy, Byron area. And then there is one federal pump down there, and there's one state pump down there. And the state can turn on their pump to pump water, per the governor, south of the Delta, down the California Aqueduct, or the feds can push water down their canal per the CVP. Okay? That's how that works. Now, let me come back up the system. Now let's get up to Orville. Orville was built in the 60s by, blanking on his name, our past governor's dad. Somebody put it in the comments, please, because I am fully blanking right now. Brown, right? Is it Brown? I'm blanking. Before Gavin. Yeah, Pat Brown, right? I think that's right. Because, yeah, Jerry Brown's dad, Pat Brown, I think, 60s. I was born in the 80s, so I'm 45 years old, so it was before my time. But, so, in the 60s, they built Lake Orville, and they built Orville Dam, and that was called the State Water Project. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Pat Brown, I was right. Okay, thanks, guys. So, the State Water Project was built in the 60s, and the SWP was designed to move water. Okay, so you got Shasta and American, it's a federal project. Now you got the state project coming right through here, taking all the water from this area down through Orville, and the state project then will take the water, drop it in at Verona, comes down the Sacramento River, and then it goes out through the DCC or Georgiana Slough, and then it drops down and gets right in to Tracy, Clifton Court, Forebay, and then the state pumps go on, and the state sends water south. Now you're going to say, is that how it works? Okay, kind of. So then, when the state turns on their pumps, and the Fed turns on their pumps, that's called your delta diversion outflow, your delta diversion, okay? How much is being pumped south? Currently, right now, it's around, I think, 7,000 acre feet. I think we're right around 7,000 acre feet, something like, or 7,000 CFS, something like that, right around, I said 7,000 acre feet. 7,000 CFS, I think, is being pumped right now. The Trump administration has turned on their pumps at around 75% capacity. He's pumping 3/4 of what they can legally. And the state, our governor, is sending down approximately 25% of what he can do, and he's sending 25% down. Now, the water then goes down the aqueducts, and then it fills San Luis Reservoir, 2 million acre feet. It's responsible for, Vance, I'll get there in 1 second, good comment. San Luis Reservoir is 2 million acre feet, responsible, 1 million acre feet responsible for the state, 1 million acre feet responsible for the feds, and those are the State Water Project and the Central Valley Project storage. So they fill St. Louis, and then St. Louis gets shipped down the California aqueduct, and it goes down. Now, the federal water goes down to Kern County, Westlands, Fresno area, everywhere, San Joaquin, everywhere above the Grapevine, okay? That's where the federal water stops. The Trump administration can only send water down to the Grapevine, right? To the Grapevine. They can't go over the Grapevine and get water even further south. The federal government can't do that. So when the federal government came on and said, we're going to ship all this water from Northern California to LA, it's like, you can't. The federal government doesn't have the right. They have the right to get it down to Fresno. Bakersfield is the bottom. That's where the federal government has jurisdiction. They can only send water there. Okay, now, if those individuals in that area, though, then want to sell water to Metropolitan Water District or sell water to farmers or municipalities or cities or anything over the Grapevine, then it has to be pumped by the state, because the State Water Project has a way to divert water and pump it up and over the Grapevine or through the Grapevine into Metropolitan Water District, Los Angeles County. That's the State Water Project that has that right. And all you got to do is just Google California water operations, California aqueduct, California, something like that. And you'll see the maps in the images from Google, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sorry I'm not on Zoom because then I could share it all with you and show you the map and show you how it all works and how all the water works. Then, if the federal government runs out of water at Shasta and Folsom, then they've got to pull from their third source, which is New Melones, 2 million acre feet. New Melones is on the Stanislaus River, and that is part of the federal project, so they can pull from New Melones. So anytime they don't have enough water from Shasta and enough water pulling from Folsom in order to pump south of Tracy to fill St. Louis and then pump south, then they pull from New Melones and pump it south. So if you understand all of that, that kind of helps. So Vance also made another comment, which is where I was going to go next after New Melones, which is included in the Sacramento, is also Trinity Lake. That is part of the federal project for the Klamath Basin. However, the federal government, U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, can bypass the Trinity River and pump water from Trinity Lake through Clear Creek, and it comes out Clear Creek over here in the west, comes down Clear Creek and pumps into Whiskeytown Lake outside of Anderson, outside right there of Cottonwood, Anderson area, right north of there, okay, south right of 5, and then that water pumps from Clear Creek into the Sacramento River. So, when, and I'm not 100% sure of this, I'm just guessing, but when President Trump said, I'm going to take water from the Pacific Northwest, there's so much water in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm going to move it all to the south, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Because I don't think he understands the water infrastructure. But what I think what he was trying to say is I'm going to take water out of Trinity Lake and move it around from the Northwest in California and shift it into the Sacramento so that he can divert more water down into Tracy and therefore pump more water south down to Bakersfield. But that doesn't mean he can pump water to LA. There's just no infrastructure for that. So I just want that to be clear. Talking about all the storage on maximum storage, you guys, if you want to see a great graph, go to the graph we posted on Monday on this Facebook page. It gives you all the reservoir levels, and that's changed since then. It's updated. We'll post one every Monday of all the reservoir levels. But you can see the historical averages. You can see the reservoir levels. And then you can see where this water goes and how much water is actually out there. I mean, we're at maximum flood capacity right now. They're releasing out of Shasta and Keswick 50 to 60,000 CFS right now. We are at full flood stage on the Sacramento River from Redding all the way down to Sacramento. You have all the weirs are pumping. Tisdale's flowing 18,000 into the Sutter bypass. Colusa and Moulton are flowing over 10,000, 15,000 CFS into the Colusa weir. And the Fremont weir is flowing over 130 to 150,000 CFS into all that land west of the Sacramento airport down through Davis that will flush through the Yolo bypass and then flush out down through the Deepwater Channel Canal down by Liberty Island and then connect into Rio Vista right where the mouth of the Sacramento and Rio Vista merge. So all that water is going to get pushed down through that way. So we're at full flood stage right now. The number one thing is always for flood protection. So when you hear these reservoirs releasing water right now, they're doing that for flood protection. Those of us that lived below Oroville Dam in 2017, that was one of the most scary things ever. All of our family had to be evacuated and everything. They all came to my house because I was on high ground back then in the little town of Sutter. So everyone from Marysville, Yuba City, Gridley, Live Oak, Oroville, everyone, Biggs, everyone had to be evacuated because if Oroville was going to bust in 17, which it almost, it was close to having a big problem, that is their number one concern. And that lake filled up so fast. And actually, me and a good friend, Matt Garcia, were coming home from Oregon, and we were sitting in the car. He's a rice farmer, and we were talking, and him and I know water, hydrology of this state very well. And we were like, dude, we're in trouble in Oroville. There's no way they're going to be able to release enough water. And it was because the spillway had already busted. They were releasing 50,000, and they were going to have to up it to maximum outflow over 100 and something thousand they were going to release. And the inflow was just too much. And that's why we got all the way up to past 900 feet elevation, and why the emergency spillway started spilling and did all that damage up there, caused all the evacuations and everything else, because we've never seen that kind of water there. So now they release water even earlier, which from a negative standpoint, if we don't get good snow melt, right? There's not a lot of snow up there, everybody. So if we don't get a lot of snow melt, we're not going to be able to fill our reservoirs all the way plumb full. You want your reservoirs plumb full all the way to May. That gives you the maximum that you can have. But they have these thresholds that basically says, like Orville, if the elevation exceeds 845 feet in February, you have to drain it. You have to get it below 840, which is 60 feet more of water is needed. 60 feet of elevation. It's like 1,000,000 acre feet. But they can't do that because of flood control. Same with Shasta, right? Shasta's maximum diversion, if they let out of the dam, is 79,000 CFS. So they always have to make sure that they have enough room for the snow melt as well as for an impending storm. If we get a big wet storm or a big heated storm here next week, when all this water is supposed to come through, if we had a big snowpack up there, we would be in big trouble. I have friends that work in fire, search and rescue, OES, and I'm talking to all of them. And I can tell you there's a lot of people that have been in this valley, worked in emergency services under flood control issues, and we're around in 06, we're around in 97, we're around in 17, and know from experience what could happen and the stress that we're putting on our levee system right now. We're talking water that's 50-year storm water right now, and maybe possibly upwards of 100-year storm amounts of water that are coming down our system right now. So I hope that kind of all explains the water. I'm now going to go back through questions, the last 8 minutes. So hopefully I gave you enough information today on salmon. Hopefully I gave you enough information on water. There's a lot more that I can cover, and I'll do more of these if you guys want. Reach out to me, write me an email, jstone@ncgasa.org. That's the best way to get a hold of me. You can always do that. You can go to our YouTube channel and become a subscriber. Please go do that. Check out all of our videos. Check out everything we did. Check out all the stuff that we've been covering and all of the things that we're doing to try to better our fishery and fight for our industry and fight for salmon. We are not fighting for smelt. We have zero skin in the game for smelt. But we do have a big skin in the game for our kids and grandkids to go catch Chinook salmon and put good omegas in their body and nourish their bodies. And unfortunately, the last 2 years, we haven't been able to do that. And a lot of the people that are against the fishing industry are all about us eating farm salmon. And that is just disgusting. Farm salmon that swim in cages in the ocean all year are not the same as a hatchery fish. So please make sure that we're spreading the correct message and we're educating everyone else out there about what's going on. But there's a lot of misinformation that I'm hearing of people saying this is all Trump's fault, this is all Gavin's fault, and this is that, this is this. I wanted to make sure I came today to explain to you the state water project and the way that it's operated, and the federal project and the way that it's operated, and that kind of gives you a basis. I also want to say about water going to the ocean. That's the biggest nonsense of the world when people say you're wasting water going out to the ocean. If somebody says that, that's a red flag to me that you have no clue what you're talking about when it comes to scientific analysis for juvenile salmon survival getting out to the ocean. You have no understanding about anything about the food web and what fresh water does to cause upwellings, to create life so that the fish have food to eat out in the ocean. You have to have fresh water exiting the Golden Gate. And many years, the last 10 years, it's only been 4,000 CFS, and that's unacceptable. We have to get that upwards of 10,000 CFS in order to help our salmon populations. It helps all of the populations. So if you live south of the Delta and you're frustrated because of water operations, the last thing you want to be is sound uneducated and say we're wasting water out to the ocean. Because when you say that for a guy like me that watches the news, I go, they don't know what they're talking about. you completely have zero understanding of how water works in California and what the water does. When water goes out to the ocean, that not only does it help all of those salmon, but you're helping yourself. Because if those winter run babies, as I mentioned earlier in this live, if your winter run and your spring run baby salmon don't get out into the ocean and live and come back, they cut your water and you don't get water south of the Delta. Winter run salmon is what's controlling your water, not the fall run that we fish for. So let's make sure we're clear on that. Let's make sure we're educating everybody on that. Need to think strategically, play the long game. Mark Turner, yes, sir. And that's what we're doing, sir. That's what we're doing at NorCal Guides and Sportsmen's Association. Got to watch out. There's a few groups that are playing the short game because they don't care about the future. They don't have kids and grandkids that like to catch salmon. They don't have a business. They just care about themselves. We've got to care about everyone. We got to do that. And I've been doing that for a long time. Even though I'm the president of the inland fleet and I represent everyone that lives inland of California, and I technically don't represent ocean people, I have thousands of members that fish the ocean for salmon, including myself, and we all want to go fishing too. But we are not going to take the cookie just to make sure that we get fed this year and then lose it forever. So that's what we need to make sure. We just need to be smart. And if there's opportunity, then let's go take it. Let's go catch our fish. We need to go catch fish. But we have to be smart. It's those farms that buy taxpayer subsidized water for cheap, sell it for huge profits. Well, there you go. Okay, there's another. We could go 50 minutes on this topic alone. So that is a different thing. So if you are a senior water right holder or a junior water right holder from the federal project or the state project, then you have allocated water every year to your farm. But if for some reason it's not good to farm that year because maybe you're getting cut 25% of your water because of drought, or 25% of your water because there's not enough storage in Shasta, there's opportunity from the South and the people in the South that will now come buy your water. So that's where we have big problems, in my opinion. Because what ends up happening is that water that was designed to either stay in the north and exit through the ocean is now getting sold, where that water would, for rice field operation, would come out of Shasta, it would go into the rice field, it would grow the rice, and then it would come, the residual amount would come back into the river. So, and then that water would then exit the ocean. But if you sell your water from north to south, that water then comes out, goes through the DCC, the Eastern Delta, and then it goes right into the federal or state pumps and gets pumped south from Tracy. That's also why when those Delta cross channels are open, that we don't want to release fish from our hatcheries, because those fish come down and then they get stuck and trapped in the Eastern Delta and they never find their way to the ocean and they get lost. And then they end up in the salvage pumps. And there's all sorts of documentation on millions of salmon, steelhead, striped bass that get killed by the federal and state pumps in Tracy and Byron. Millions over the years. Millions. More fish are killed by the pumps than striped bass. So you got to be aware of that, and you got to know what you're talking about when it comes to those. But you're right. When you're buying subsidized water, you might have a farmer in the north that only pays $60 an acre foot. But you have a farm that's going to completely go bankrupt down in Bakersfield if it doesn't get water. So what does he do? He picks up the phone and says to the farmer in the north, I know you're only paying $60 an acre foot, but if I don't get your water, I'm going to lose everything. And I'll pay you whatever you want. What do you want? I'll give you $600. That used to be a big number back in the day. $600 an acre foot. I only have a 100-acre farm. And I only get 5.5 acres of water for rice. So you're telling me for 550 acre feet of water, you're going to pay me $600 an acre foot? You're going to give me $330,000? I don't even have to turn my tractor on. I don't even have to leave my doorstep. And that's what happens. So people in the north sell their water. They make a big chunk of money. It keeps their farm alive until next year. And now that water gets transferred and it keeps the farm alive down south. The problem is that these farms down south are not the same as the farms up north. There are family farms in the San Joaquin. There are family farms in Fresno and down in Bakersfield. But there are also very large corporate firms that are ran by hedge funds with billions of dollars that have invested billions, tens of billions of dollars, life insurance companies, subsidized companies that are hedging their bets against the California water system. And they're growing almonds that are the most thirsty crop out there at a gallon per almond. And the worst part is that 90% of that crop is sold out of America. It's not even sold in America. So again, Trump, if you ever get this, America first would mean that we take care of America first, meaning that water should go to American family farms that are growing food for Americans, not corporate agriculture hedge funds that have zero connection to community, zero connection to the environment, to the ecosystem, and don't care about where they get their water from and what they do to other people or species. And that's what's happened to salmon. That's the truth. Gwen, can you please explain at a minimum why they can't run a recreational salmon season with a one fish limit and shut down commercial fishing? Okay, Michael Wynn, good question. Can you do that? Sure, they could do that. But it's more of an optics thing. The commercial fleet, remember, they pay for salmon to be produced from the McCollum hatchery so that they can go catch. Remember what the commercial fleet does. They're farmers of the sea. The commercial fleet, and I'm not a commercial fisherman, never have been, don't have any family that are commercial fishermen, but I have a lot of friends that are commercial fishermen, and I've seen what this has done to their small little family businesses. Most commercial fishermen are operating very small vessels under 40 feet, and they're going out and catching 10 or 20 salmon, and they're trying to sell them at the dock to support their small family of 4. Just like you and me, going to their job, doing what they're supposed to do, selling their product, high quality product, at dock sales on dock prices. The bigger boats are trying to go out there to catch 100 to 200 fish, and they're supplying every restaurant that wants wild Pacific salmon, and they're supplying and supporting every Safeway, every Whole Foods, every Albertsons, every Lucky's, every single grocery outlet, and every other Costco, Sam's Club, and everything else that sells salmon. That's what they're there for. The commercial fleet is designed to provide food for people that can't go get it for themselves. So from the standpoint of understanding those commercial fleet, they are the farmers of the sea, and they do provide the resource to all of these other people. And the economic impact it's in the billions. It's in the billions, and it's all closed down for 2 years. And nobody is getting wild Pacific salmon. I ate salmon the other day in Sacramento, and it was from New Zealand. And guess where the New Zealand stock came from in the 1900s? The Sacramento River. So it's crazy. We are now selling New Zealand salmon that used to be our salmon because we can't even manage our own salmon. Can they open a recreational salmon fishery? Yes, they can. The optics of opening recreational while the rest of the commercial fleet is tied to the docks in the ocean, not that popular. The option of opening a recreational inland fishery is possible also. If it gets opened inland, I didn't say this earlier, and a lot of people already signed off. I probably should say it now. If they open an ocean fishery, you're going to see an inland fishery, but you will not be able to fish anywhere from the Golden Gate all the way to Redding. They will shut down the entire bay. They will shut down Benicia, Vallejo, Martinez, all of the Delta. They will shut down all of the Sacramento River inland. 95% sure, because of how bad the Sacramento River stocks are. They will actually only open up the mouth of the Feather up to Orville, the mouth of the American in Sacramento up to the Nimbus Basin, and then they'll open up the mouth of the McCollum inland. You'll only be able to fish inland in those actual rivers because they can make sure that you're only catching those stocks. And that's where the challenge happens in March and April. If there was an ocean fishery, how do we go out into the ocean and stay away from the winter run, the spring run, the coastal Chinooks, the Klamath fish? and now the Sacramento fish. There's nowhere for us to move the fleet. There's nowhere to open up in the north or in the south because everything is having problems now. There's nowhere to move everyone, time, area, place. If I open you up I can't open you up in April and May it's not even me anymore. The SAS, I'm not part of it anymore. But the Salmon Advisory Subpanel can't recommend a season to the council to open up a fishery in San Francisco and Monterey if there's impacts on the winter run and sac. They can't open a fishery up in the north if there's problems with the Klamath or the coastal Chinooks. So I encourage you to ask questions, be engaged, and participate and show up. It's in Vancouver, Washington, March 5th to March 11th. So you're going to have to do remote if you don't want to travel up there. But that kind of answers the question. And the one fish, it doesn't really matter if you go one fish or two fish. And the reason why is because most recreational anglers catch one fish automatically. So the model's predicting like a 1.1 average. And so therefore, even if we went down to a one fish limit, it wouldn't actually reduce the amount of take in the ocean, if that makes sense. It does reduce the amount of take inland. So I would expect that even if we did have an inland season, it would be a one fish limit in season inland. That would be my guess. I'm just trying to guess for you.